this worshipping of, you know, gods and the creator God, if you want, it's confusing. You know, do you think people are starting to wake up and see that there's a very stark difference here now? That if you read the scriptures and it's the work for yourself, Michael, and others that are bringing this to the forefront, do you think the civilization is going to be able to make this, you know, connection for themselves?
I think they're going to have to, because, you know, these beings are here. They're not going anywhere. They've been here not for thousands of years, but not for hundreds, but thousands of years. They tell us that they have been involved in creating human beings, have tweaked us in different points in history to try to improve on what they had created. And this is not saying that there is no creator. Remember, Catholicism has saints and Hinduism. They could have been acting under the auspices or for the greater creator. But you're going to have to go back and look at these stories with new eyes, with an open heart, because these beings are going to have to be incorporated into a new cosmology, a new paradigm shift. So in other words, we're going to have to be looking with 21st century eyes now. I don't see any other way we can do it if we want to keep those books to be relevant for us today. I'm talking about the Bible and the Quran. We're going to have to look at these books in light of the information that we have now about off-world intelligences. Otherwise, we're going to be at a loss.
Sure. Michael, I want to talk about your faith for a moment, just more out of curiosity than anything. You know, in Europe, particularly Ireland, England, Scotland, you know, you have a two-party race, if you want to call it that. You've got Protestant and Catholic, and I actually had to look up the other day, Michael, how many different congregations there were. I was getting confused and I looked it up. I'm actually shocked how many different types of congregations there are, Michael. So forgive me for not being too knowledgeable in your faith, but tell us a little bit about the Unitarian Universalist congregation.
Okay. They started in Europe, but I'll cut to the chase. And when it came here from Europe, Transylvania, we started out as liberal Christians. Unitarians believe in one God. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. They believe that Jesus was a human being who was an example of how to live a committed life. Unitarian, not Trinitarian, Unitarian. Mm-hmm. Universalists believed that a loving God would not damn you to hell. In other words, Universalists say everybody's saved. Nobody's burning in hell. If God is love, then there's no punishment. There's only the punishment that comes from you doing something untoward to someone else. Because remember, it's karma. What goes around comes around. Now, they merged in 1961. I'm giving you the truncated version.
For sure.
But those are the basic differences. Unitarians do not believe in a Trinity, and Universalists believe that no loving God would damn someone to hell. Mm-hmm. And so the Unitarians are the more educated. They went to Harvard, and usually that side came from a more wealthier side. Ralph Waldo Emerson was a Unitarian. Mm-hmm. Now the Universalists were more blue collar, and they were more blue collar people. They weren't going to the great universities and what have you. And we merged. But that's basically the big difference. If you're a Unitarian, you don't believe in a Trinity. We also believe in reason, that you use your mind. You just don't take things on faith. You use your mind. You study. You research. You experience. And we believe that revelation is not sealed, that new truths are being discovered every day. It just didn't stop in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation happened, and then everything is known. There's no more to know. Mm-hmm. We don't believe that. Mm-hmm. And we also believe that you you guide your own ship. You create your own theology. Now, what we do believe in, we believe in all the truths of all the religions. We believe that we are connected to the earth. We believe in the democratic process on how we choose to live our lives. We believe in educating our children. We don't believe in wars and those types of things. Mm-hmm. But the human being is his or her own boss. They shape their own religious life, not someone else. So when I go to church on Sunday, like I had to speak yesterday, mm-hmm. and we have Buddhists there, we have people who are atheists, we have people who are Christian, we have liberal Christian, we have people who don't know and don't care. We all come together, and we always say we don't have to think alike to love alike. We believe in feeding the hungry. We believe in social justice and in equality and race relations. We have more women ministers in our denomination than probably most of mainline Christianity. Mm-hmm. We had the first woman to be ordained in the United States, mm-hmm. was the Reverend Olympia Brown. She was a Universalist minister.
Mm-hmm. What a wonderful grounded perspective and philosophy, Michael. Really is. You mentioned Ralph Waldo Emerson in the book as well. Let's tell us a little bit about his philosophy on this issue.
Well, he was the father of what we call transcendentalism. He left our denomination because he thought we were too Christian. And back at that time we were. And he was saying that he got very much into Hinduism and Eastern religions. And he just felt that what I just said to you, that the human being develops his or her own spirituality, not someone telling you what to do. And he was just very open about that the answers are not outside of you, that you have to start looking within, because we're not separated from all that is. We are part of it. Mm-hmm. So we're not separated from God. We are part of God. How can the creation be separated from the creator? And he was a maverick. And he gave a speech at Harvard Divinity School, and he really shook the foundation of liberal Christianity. And he says, I just can't be a part of this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He gravitated more. So did Henry David Thoreau. Of course, they were contemporaries. And they both gravitated more towards Hinduism and what have you. Not so much that they would say I'm a Hindu, but they saw that in the East, there wasn't that separation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that kind of heaven or hell and who's saved and who's not. It was that the god Brahman had different aspects. So this deity may have been the compassionate part of the Brahman. One deity may have represented the destructive part of the Brahman, but that they were all part of the whole. We don't have that in Christianity. Everything is separate. And the belief in separateness, it's what's going to destroy us.
For sure. I think that's the thing about, not to put Unitarian on a pedestal, a great open perspective and great philosophy, yeah, but there has been other pioneers and other faiths. I think Giordano Bruno, and from a Catholic perspective, let's maybe talk about his philosophy on this too, Michael, just to kind of balance the sheets, as they say.
Well, Bruno was ahead of his time. He was a genius. Mm-hmm. And basically, he was martyred because he dared to challenge the party line, that there were possible life on other planets, that perhaps Jesus was not born of a virgin, perhaps he was just one of many models on how to live a life of integrity, how to live a life of compassion and love. And that's simply not what the the church wanted to hear at that time. And so it cost him his life. He was a scientist, and he was arrested in Venice in 1592, and he was tried for heresy in 1593. And again, now the church has apologized for what they did to him, but what good did that do him? He was 52 years old at the time of his death. He did not believe in the divinity of Jesus, nor did he believe in the Trinity. He did not believe that Mary was a virgin, and he did not mind voicing those ideas. He thought that the human soul could return to earth in a new body after death. So he believed in reincarnations. He also believed that the human soul would move on to infinite number of worlds besides earth. I mean, that was just too much for the Inquisition at the time, and he paid a dear price for it.
Wow. Michael, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We're going to take a little break. Before you do, can you just give us your website, Michael, where people can get a copy of the book?
Sure. They can get both books at Amazon or Barnes & Nobles. It's online, Amazon.com, sure. BarnesandNobles.com. You can go to my website, which is michaeljscarter.com. But you can definitely get both books on Amazon.
Oh, wonderful, Michael. Michael, just going to take a quick break and be back in just a moment.
Okay.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Capricorn Radio. This is your host, James, and I'm talking to Michael J.S. Carter. You can get Michael's personal information bio and his books at michaeljscarter.com. We're talking about A New World If You Can Take It, his latest book. And Michael's previous book is Alien Scriptures, talking about alien scriptures in the Bible. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Oh, good to have you back, Michael. Michael, I just want to talk a little bit, just a little friendly chat. You come back from the Edgar Cayce conference. Tell us a little bit about that, what happened there.
Well, it was very, very interesting. First of all, they're a class act. It's called the Ancient Mysteries Conference. I think they have it either once or twice a year. I was one of the speakers. Of course, the keynotes were Giorgio and Eric von Daniken.
Oh, wow.
And what was so great about it was I hadn't done a conference in probably close to 20 years, and was down in Virginia Beach, lovely weather, hotel right on the beach. Just how people were hungry for this type of information. They were hungry for, and it was more women than men. At my talk, there were 280 people, so it was pretty much sold out. People bought the books, but out of those 280 people, 210 were women.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Because I talked to a friend of mine about it, and she said, Michael, women are not interested in propulsion systems and back-engineered technology and that kind of thing.
True.
They want to know about the spiritual transformation, if any, that can occur. And what was also astounding was how many people came up to me and said, you know what? I've had visitations too. I just didn't know who to talk to about it, or I didn't know how to put it into my context. And so a lot of these people there were contactees. And so by having me there, it gave them permission to come out of the closet, if you will.
A platform.
And it was really wonderful.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome, Michael. Awesome. You're still running the Ancient Aliens episodes as well, is that correct?
Yes, we taped some episodes of season 7 back in July of this past summer, and some of them are airing now. I don't watch it because I don't have cable. If I'm at my friend's house, they have cable, but I don't get History Channel 2. Luckily, they'll send me copies. The Prometheus Productions will send me copies of the episodes I've been on.
Sure.
But they're already airing now.
Oh, awesome.
For season 7, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't caught this season 7, so I look forward to seeing you on it, Michael.
Oh, yeah. They do a good job. I tell you, I don't know how they did it. I didn't think they could get 7 seasons out of this, but they may get another few seasons out of it.
I think they train wrecked a couple of seasons, and then they came back to grassroots again, and just kind of, But you've been a veteran of the show, Michael. You've been on quite a few times, and it's pertinent to what you do in your work, Michael, and it's pertinent to the show as well. It's a major element to the whole ancient alien hypothesis. So.
Well, I'd like to think that I am making a difference. You're helping me. I mean, hopefully people will say, "Boy, I'm curious about this." Is a minister writing about religion and extraterrestrials. So hopefully people will go out and buy the book. You provide, and others like you, a forum for ancient astronaut theorists, for people like myself, to really help people to find other sources of knowledge. I mean, in the book I talk about Gnosticism, and that's the philosophy of knowing yourself, of going within as opposed to going without. And it's hard to do that in a world where there's so much noise. It's hard to sit still when you're on your iPod, or when you're on your cell phone, or when you're on your tablet. And the only way to kind of cultivate that is to be countercultural and to learn to be still. Sure. Learn to meditate, even if it's for 3 to 5 minutes a day, just to learn and listen to that still small voice within you.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's some sort of a revivalist movement for Gnosticism there to come back, and maybe tell us a little bit the history of Gnosticism, Michael.
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I don't think it ever went away.
Sure.
I think that what it did was it went underground.
Yeah.
And basically, it was a group of people, and well, you can have it in any religion, who just went against the grain, who were saying that, there's an ancient knowledge that I know, or I need to trust myself and not listen to of course they were persecuted, like many people are who don't toe the party line. But the main motto of the Gnostic was to know yourself, to know thyself. And that attitude, that type of philosophy, even today. Now, in 1979, Elaine Pagels, who was a professor of religion at Princeton, she wrote a book called The Gnostic Gospels. And it was an important book because it revealed the tension among the various Gnostic groups, who became champions of what Christianity became during the first 400 years of its existence. The Gospel of Thomas, which is a sayings gospel. It has these sayings of Jesus. That's all it is. It's just sentences. It's just statements by him that were not put into the canon of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I'm reading from my book on page 46, just to give people a definition of what Gnosticism is, and there are many definitions. But basically, Gnosticism is the belief that there is an inner personal knowledge and awareness of one's unity with the creation, or God, if you prefer, within the consciousness of every individual. This awareness can be tapped into by meditation, by prayer, and contemplation. The Greeks called this awareness knowledge, or gnosis, and one does not need any member of the clergy or any religious organization to lead one to this knowledge. That is the definition of Gnosticism. But you see how dangerous it was, or can be, because it takes power away from the clergy and it gives it to the individual.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. Michael, I wanted to mention throw a few things at you. In the book, you talk about the Elohim, the Nephilim, the Enochian scripture, and Ezekiel as well. Just throwing a few concepts at you. This stuff is alarming. It should scream bells to people, this stuff is like, off the chart in terms of what we perceive it to be in a religious, spiritual sense. However, if we look at it in terms of in the extraterrestrial presence or ancient astronaut theory or something like that, it may make more sense or be more believable in a way, Michael.
Well, I think that if we look at what our ancestors were telling us, and there's a quote I love in the book by Kierkegaard who says that life is lived forward, but it can only be understood backwards. Mm-hmm. And that if we look through the lens of the ancient astronaut theory, mm-hmm. what they're trying to tell us is simply that they were in contact with beings from another world. Mm-hmm. And that these beings interacted with people. Some of them were called prophets. Some of these beings were using the prophets as mouthpieces. Some of them had even ridden in these ships. We talk about the spaceships in Ezekiel. He's describing what's going on with him. We look at Genesis 4, Enoch goes into more detail, the book of Enoch, when the sons of God, which means the star visitors, mated with the daughters of men. They mated with earth women, and they created a hybrid race. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense to me, especially if we take everywhere you see angel in the Bible, because angel just means messenger in Greek. Doesn't mean they had wings. I believe they had wings. Our ancestors were trying to tell us they could fly. But if you put extraterrestrial everywhere you see angel in the Bible, it certainly makes more sense.
For sure.
We have Jesus telling us, my kingdom is not of this world. He tells us that in the Gospel of John. Now, if his father is not human and his mother is, then that means Jesus is not human. He's part human.
Isn't the etymology of angel messenger as well?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Angel means messenger in Greek.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the cherubims and the seraphims are angels as well. Is that correct?
Yes, they're other deities.
Wow. It's like what you're portraying, Michael, is a lens. It's an accurate lens. It's like we're able to look back with a focal point and kind of with more discerning world view, if you want.
Yeah, and we look at what we see flying in our skies now. We have military people. We have people talking about astronauts. Edgar Mitchell. We have people talking about, hey man, I know for a fact that we have been visited, that we're continually being visited. We have Robert Hastings. He's doing this whole documentary on UFOs and nukes. I commend his book to you very highly about these beings on occasion have shut down our missile silos. They shut them down. So these are very, very powerful events, and these are very powerful beings. And so could these not be the same beings who our ancestors were telling us about?
Sure.
In the Bible, in the Quran, in the Old Testament?
Sure.
And the Mahabharata?
Yeah, for sure. Oh, totally, Michael. Totally. I agree with you. Yeah, I did a show recently actually on UFOs and nuclear disarmament, and Robert Salas was on to name another guest as well.
Yeah.
I totally with it. I do think that, we're going to mess this planet up with nuclear arsenals. I can see why a different species would come to this planet and disarm us if they were in the vicinity, if we were, I look at the vastness of space, Michael, okay, and statistically look at the number of planets, okay, and I statistically think there if they had a billion-year head start on us, they're going to be more evolved naturally. Why wouldn't they be zapping around and flying around different solar systems, scouting for talent? In other words, planets, scouting around for habitats. I mean, if I was a head of a civilization or a part of the committee, and I was evolved, I would be scouting for other planets, because who's to say you're not going to get hit with an asteroid? Who's to say your planet's going to last forever? Of course you're going to want to jump ship for safety. There's a natural reason why people would do that. And if that's the status quo for visitors out there, why wouldn't they try and step in and sort out the nuclear problem? Because it is a major problem, Michael. And I do think that what a funny time for Roswell to happen, around the 1947 period. Like you say in the book, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, this is an incredibly interesting time on this planet. Not a positive time, but an incredibly interesting time, Michael.
Well, yes, because these sightings and these contacts picked up after we split the atom over 2 civilian cities. Let's be clear. You want to talk about terrorism? Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not military targets. They were civilian targets.
Genocide.
And so, and then I'm sure it got the attention of other civilizations. And if we're to believe, some of the things that we hear about Eisenhower making a treaty with one race of star visitors, but if they're concerned, because that's how connected we are. That's how connected we are. And they're probably thinking there's a kid in the backyard playing with a gun. Nothing good is going to come of that.
For sure. Can you tell us the story of Jacob's ladder, Michael? I think this is incredibly fascinating.
Well, basically, Jacob he falls asleep. He has a dream that and in the dream there are beings going up and down a ladder. I interpreted that as angels going up and down on a ship. From a ship. And he wrestles with one of them, and he wrestles all night. And he says to the angel, "I'm not going to let you go until you bless me." And the angel touches his thigh, and he becomes limp. And he walks with a limp from that day forth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredibly bizarre story. I know a lot of either societies and groups of people refer to Jacob's Ladder story as well. And you mentioned also the Ark of the Covenant in the book. I'm just trying to...
Well, also, just Jacob also becomes Israel. I'm sorry. In Genesis 35:10, they say God, I think it's an astronaut, says, "Your name shall be Jacob." Your name is Jacob, but you will not be called Jacob any longer. From now on, your name will be Israel. Now, here we have the makings of the Hebrew religion. Remember, there's no Judaism until after the Exodus.
Sure, correct.
There's no Jewish religion. And here we have the name. Jacob is now named Israel, but he's named that by a star visitor, by an angel.
Wow. Wow, it's mind-bending in a way, but it's sobering too. It's mind-bending because we were all taught to believe something else, or maybe we've been disimbued from the truth or from lack of awareness or whatever, but it's sobering nonetheless. You mentioned also the Ark of the Covenant. I have to mention this. This is incredibly interesting in terms of what it is, what it does, Michael, and maybe just give us a little bit of the bizarre activities of the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, the Ark of the Covenant was a communication device, I believe. We've done certain things on Ancient Aliens about it, where they could communicate with Yahweh. It was made of gold. He told them how to make it to his specific, recommendations. And the people carried it The Hebrew people would carry it with them, and they would hear his voice, or maybe there was a hologram or something where they could actually see him. But it's definitely a piece of technology. Now, what was so bizarre about it is that the priest had to wear certain gear, and I think that protective gear was to keep them from being from radiation poisoning. They had to keep their genitals covered. There were hats. There was a vest they had to wear. Those types of things. And there's stories in the Bible where Aaron's sons, made a mistake and touched it, and they would fall down dead. They were probably electrocuted. But the Hebrews interpreted it as they found disfavor with God. But you see what I'm saying? They were trying to use the language of their day. They were into the mindset of their day. And we just know that they probably didn't find disfavor. They probably were just electrocuted.
Bizarre. There's so many. It pops up quite a few times in the Ark of the Covenant as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it really, really does.
It's not just a rogue. It's not a rogue story.
It was captured in a battle by the Philistines, but the Philistines, they were dying by the thousands, and they probably died from radiation poison. So they wanted to give it back to the Israelites. They wanted to give it back to the Hebrews because they said, look, this thing is killing us.
Wow. Capture something and then give it back.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's wild, this stuff, isn't it? It's wild, but it's, when you look at it from a 21st century perspective, it's not, Michael. That's the key thing I want to point out. Okay, Michael, let's talk about evolution of human consciousness here. I mean, what does this all mean? You talk about the anthropomorphic creator in the book and how that can ingest fear. Maybe explain why that is, Michael.
I think that we make God in our image. And so the God is a jealous God, or we know what God means. God doesn't like those gay people. God doesn't like those black people. God doesn't like those poor white people. God doesn't like Obama. We think we know what this God wants. And as I stated earlier in the show, the finite can never comprehend the infinite. So we make God in our image. God is a man. Because in our image, it has to be a man, because men have all the power. And so I think that lends a lot of confusion and fear to the way we look at each other and creation. Nature is not something to be cooperated with or worked with. Nature is something to be conquered. It's something, so it's fear. If you don't do this, this will happen. If you don't, the knee doesn't bow a certain way. If you don't say things just right, if you don't believe in the exact same way I do, you're going to go to hell. And so it's just fear. And it's very controlling, and we see that it's not working anymore. Maybe it worked at one time, but to me, there's nothing to fear. Einstein said one of the most important questions we'll ask ourselves is the universe a friendly place? And so whether you're talking to L.A. Marzulli, who is a more evangelical Christian, he writes about the Nephilim, but it's all this fear. You got to be afraid of them. You got to be afraid of this. And you got to be afraid of Ebola. You got to be afraid of the immigrants coming in. You got to be afraid of ISIS. You got to be afraid of, it's just fear. These are important issues, certainly.
Wow.
But when do we live when we're just taught to fear everything?
Sure. I hear you. I just had L.A. Marzulli on the show, by the way.
Yeah, I know you did. That's why I brought him up.
Wow. Thank you for that.
But it's just fear.
Well, that's why I'm so looking forward to today's show, Michael, because you're such a gracious soul and an intelligent soul, and I love what you have to give us, Michael, and you are giving a great service to the world. I mean, just for the listeners, don't take my word for or Michael's. Read the book. I will say at the start of the book, there's a compiled list of interesting scriptures, information in the scriptures that pertains to what we're talking about. It's well documented. It's by no means a definitive list, as you say, Michael, in the book, but it's great to see that in a compiled list, Michael. I'm a list maker. I like lists. So,
I wish sometimes I think I should have put it in the first book, but I got it in here, and I think it'll give people, just to get them thinking.
Some people need that, Michael, and I think you did credit to the book for that, because me too. It's not that I need it, but it's nice when I see it because it helps me. I'm there quicker. I'm moving along faster. I'm accepting more.
Because I want people to know that you don't have to have visits from people from other planets to tell you the things that I'm telling you. I'm just saying this is part of my story, and I'm not anti-religious. Believe me, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to say that basically we're here to learn to love. Mm-hmm. And I'll know what you believe by how you treat me. You can go to church every Wednesday night for Bible study. You can go to the temple on Friday for Shabbos, or you can go to the mosque on Friday and what have you. That's all lovely. But we all know people who do all the right things, but sometimes they're the most bigoted, hurtful people that you can come across, but yet they go to church all the time. And so I say that I know what you believe by the way you treat me and the way you treat this planet. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's not so much about what you say, it's about what you do. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Michael, this one's for your chance with the readers. You talk about atheism, spirituality, and faith in the book. You tackle these three concepts and what one really actually means in its true definition or context, and how they relate to each other. Because if there's readers out there that may be atheists, there may be readers out there that are into spirituality, and there may be readers out there that are in the faith. So maybe this is your chance to talk to them direct and kind of maybe explain these concepts.
Well, I happen to think that everybody has faith in something. And I don't want to trivialize it, but when you're in your automobile, you have faith that the other person's going to stay in their lane while you're driving down the street. We all have faith in something. Sure. What I started thinking about was that, and at one time I called myself an atheist. I was so disgusted with the Bible and Christianity. But a lot of atheists, they're not hostile to religion. They're not hostile to Christianity. But what they're saying is, I don't know if there's a God or not. Now, some people will say, I don't believe in God. Fine. I know people who don't believe in God that will treat you better than people who do. But what they're saying is, many of them are saying, I don't know if there's a God, but I don't believe in the God that you believe in. I don't believe in Santa Claus up in the sky. I don't believe in someone who's going to come and barbecue me because I don't believe the same way they do. I don't believe in a God who's going to kill all the firstborn children just to prove a point. I don't believe in a God who's going to tell the Hebrews to go into the land of milk and honey and kill all the men, women, and children. That's what they're saying. They're saying, I may not believe in God, or I may not even know. I'm an agnostic. I don't know if there's a God, but I know I can't believe in someone who would do that. And I have to say, I agree with them.
Wow. Beautifully spoken, Michael. Beautifully spoken. Michael, at the end of the show, I've got one last question for you. I have to mention this. The Talmud of Emmanuel. I mean, I'd never even heard of this before, Michael.
I know. It's a fantastic book. Some people say that the jury's still out on Billy Meyer. I think that he's onto something. He is a Swiss farmer. He has one arm. You can Google him, Billy Meyer. But he and a guy named Rashid, who was assassinated, discovered the book of Matthew, but it's written from a star person's point of view, where Jesus is born of Gabriel's his father, literally. He's a teacher of reincarnation. He's a teacher of wisdom. He's not a teacher of saving souls. And you can buy it on Amazon. It may be some astronomical amount of money now, but in other words, it's an extraterrestrial view of the Matthew's gospel. Jesus is called Emmanuel. He's called, spelled with a J. But, here's something that we probably never even thought of. Jesus, in Isaiah 7:14, it says, pardon me, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. In Matthew, verse 1, chapter 1:23, behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. How did Emmanuel turn into Jesus? But we don't ask those questions. It says right here in the scriptures, his name shall be called Emmanuel. But somehow his name is called Jesus. And Emmanuel means, according to the Palladians, the one with godly knowledge.
Wow.
And it's spelled Jmmanuel. Mm-hmm. And it's pronounced Emmanuel. Now, that is, I can't tell you how important this book is. Mm-hmm. So, to the readers and listeners, Jesus survives the crucifixion. He goes to India with his wife, Mary, and his mother. The teachings make so much more sense in the Talmud than they do sometimes in Matthew. And some people say it's a hoax, but if it is, they'd have to be a genius to be able to go through the whole book of Matthew. And it's translated from Aramaic. One page has the German, because Billy Meyer is Swiss German, mm-hmm. and it has the translation from the Aramaic. It's worth a read, but it will give you a whole different perspective on the ministry of Emmanuel, whom we call Jesus. He is a teacher of wisdom. He says that there is a God, but this God is extraterrestrial. Above this God is something called creation, and that's what we call what he calls God. He calls it creation. He says there are astronauts, and they are gods, and some of them are the gods of the human races. But above that God is something called creation, which is the all that is. Very different message from what we've been getting through religion. Very different message. And he comes out and he says that my father is Gabriel. He calls him, he's one of the celestial sons.
Michael, we're at the end of the show. It's been great talking to you. It really has. Your website again is michaeljscarter.com. So forgive me for not being too knowledgeable in your faith, but tell us a little bit about the Unitarian Universalist congregation.
Okay. They started in Europe, but I'll cut to the chase. And when it came here from Europe, Transylvania, we started out as liberal Christians. Unitarians believe in one God. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Mm-hmm. They believe that Jesus was a human being who was an example of how to live a committed life. Unitarian, not Trinitarian, Unitarian. Mm-hmm. Universalists believe that a loving God would not damn you to hell. In other words, Universalists say everybody's saved. Nobody's burning in hell. If God is love, then there's no punishment. There's only the punishment that comes from you doing something untoward to someone else. Because remember, it's karma. What goes around comes around. Now, they merged in 1961. I'm giving you the truncated version.
For sure.
But those are the basic differences. Unitarians do not believe in a Trinity, and Universalists believe that no loving God would damn someone to how we choose to live our lives. We believe in educating our children. We don't believe in wars and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
But the human being is his or her own boss. They shape their own religious life, not someone else. So when I go to church on Sunday, like I had to speak yesterday,
mm-hmm.
and we have Buddhists there, we have people who are atheists, we have people who are Christian, we have liberal Christian, we have people who don't know and don't care. We all come together, and we always say we don't have to think alike to love alike. We believe in feeding the hungry. We believe in social justice and in equality and race relations. We have more women ministers in our denomination than probably most of mainline Christianity. Mm-hmm. We had the first woman to be ordained in the United States, mm-hmm. was the Reverend Olympia Brown. She was a Universalist minister.
Mm-hmm. What a wonderful grounded perspective and philosophy, Michael. Really is. You mentioned Ralph Waldo Emerson in the book as well. Let's tell us a little bit about his philosophy on this issue.
Well, he was the father of what we call transcendentalism, hell. Mm-hmm. And so the Unitarians are the more educated. They went to Harvard, and usually that side came from a more wealthier side. Ralph Waldo Emerson was a Unitarian. Mm-hmm. Now the Universalists were more blue collar, and they were more blue collar people. They weren't going to the great universities and what have you. And we merged. But that's basically the big difference. If you're a Unitarian, you don't believe in a Trinity. We also believe in reason, that you use your mind. You just don't take things on faith. You use your mind. You study. You research. You experience. And we believe that revelation is not sealed, that new truths are being discovered every day. It just didn't stop in the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation happened, and then everything is known. There's no more to know. Mm-hmm. We don't believe that. Mm-hmm. And we also believe that you guide your own ship. You create your own theology. Now, what we do believe in, we believe in all the truths of all the religions. We believe that we are connected to the earth. We believe in the democratic process on how. Remember, Catholicism has saints, and Hinduism, they could have been acting under the auspices or for the greater creator. But you're going to have to go back and look at these stories with new eyes, with an open heart, because these beings are going to have to be incorporated into a new cosmology, a new paradigm shift. So in other words, we're going to have to be looking with 21st century eyes now. I don't see any other way we can do it. Mm-hmm. If we want to keep those books to be relevant for us today. And I'm talking about the Bible and the Quran. We're going to have to look at these books in light of the information that we have now about off-world intelligences. Otherwise, we're going to be at a loss.
Sure. Michael, I want to talk about your faith for a moment, just more out of curiosity than anything. In Europe, particularly Ireland, England, Scotland, you have a two-party race, if you want to call it that. You've got Protestant and Catholic, and I actually had to look up the other day, Michael, how many different congregations there were. I was getting confused, and I looked it up. I'm actually shocked how many different types of congregations there are, Michael. This worshipping of, gods and the creator God, if you want, it's confusing Do you think people are starting to wake up and see that there's a very stark difference here now? That if you read the scriptures and it's the work for yourself, Michael, and others that are bringing this to the forefront, do you think the civilization is going to be able to make this, connection for themselves?
I think they're going to have to, because these beings are here. They're not going anywhere. They've been here not for thousands of years, not for hundreds, but thousands of years. They tell us that they have been involved in creating human beings, have tweaked us in different points in history to try to improve on what they had created. And this is not saying that there is no creation.